Is Russell Erxleben one of the biggest frauds in NFL history? A former player who turned to a life of scams after his disappointing football career. Drafted 11th overall as a punter, he never lived up to expectations on the field, but off it, he masterminded massive Ponzi schemes and fake investment deals that cost victims millions. After retiring from the NFL, Russell Erxleben ventured into the world of finance, branding himself as a financial investor specializing in foreign exchange trading. He founded Austin Forex International in Austin, Texas, positioning the company as a promising avenue for investors. To the untrained eye, Erxleben seemed to have reinvented himself, a former NFL player turned savvy businessman. But behind the polished exterior was a web of deception that would eventually unravel. In 1999, a tip-off led to a full-blown investigation by the Texas State Securities Board and the IRS. What they uncovered was shocking. Erxleben had been making false claims about the success of Austin Forex, luring investors with promises of high returns that didn't exist. The company Erxleben built was nothing more than a house of cards, carefully crafted with lies and false promises. He claimed investors would see massive returns, using his charm and status as a former NFL player to build trust. But it was all a facade. When investigators dug deeper, the truth was exposed. The money wasn't going into real investments. It was being shuffled around in a classic Ponzi scheme. The deception didn't just cost people their savings, it shattered their trust. The fallout from Erxleben's fraud was nothing short of massive. In September 2000, he stood in court facing the consequences of his actions. United States District Court Judge James R. Nowlin sentenced him to 7 years in prison. Alongside his prison time, he was slapped with a $1 million fine and ordered to pay a jaw-dropping $28 million in restitution to the investors he had swindled. The sheer size of the financial damage was hard to fathom, but the punishment didn't end there. The legal mess extended far beyond Erxleben himself. The firm settled a related lawsuit for $22 million, a staggering amount that highlighted just how widespread and damaging Erxleben's actions were. Other firms also reached settlements, pushing the total to $34 million. It was a web of lawsuits and payouts that left many stunned. You would think this experience would have been a wake-up call, a chance for Erxleben to turn his life around, but incredibly, after serving a sentence and returning to society, he dove right back into the same fraudulent waters. On January 24, 2013, Russell Erxleben found himself back in handcuffs, once again entangled in the world of fraud. This time, he was caught running another Ponzi scheme, a deceptive web of lies that cost investors dearly. The new charges, which included wire fraud and money laundering, made it clear that Erxleben hadn't learned from his past mistakes. Despite serving time for similar crimes years earlier, he had returned to the same destructive path, once again putting greed above all else. By December 2013, Erxleben pleaded guilty to the charges, and on February 24, 2014, the courts handed down a harsher punishment. He was sentenced to 90 months in federal prison, a longer term than his first conviction. This second downfall cemented his reputation as a repeat offender who seemed incapable of change. His actions weren't just crimes, they were betrayals of trust that ruined lives and financial futures. When Erxleben was finally released on July 19, 2019, his name was tarnished beyond repair. What could have been a comeback story after a disappointing NFL career had turned into a tale of greed and wasted opportunity. Instead of using his second chance to rebuild his life, he threw it away, chasing easy money at the expense of others. Russell Erxleben's NFL career was as turbulent as they come, full of sky-high expectations that quickly spiraled into disappointment. When the New Orleans Saints selected him as the 11th overall pick in the 1979 NFL Draft, jaws dropped across the league. Picking a punter that high was almost unheard of, making him the highest drafted punter in history, a record he still holds. The Saints had a bold plan. Erxleben would save them a roster spot by handling both punting and place-kicking duties. On paper, it sounded like a smart move, especially considering his stellar college career at Texas. But in reality, the pressure proved too much and things went downhill fast. His NFL debut was nothing short of disastrous. On September 2nd, 1979, in a heated overtime game against the Atlanta Falcons, Erxleben found himself in a nightmare scenario. A bat snap sailed over his head, rolling dangerously close to the goal line. Scrambling under pressure, he made a panicked chest pass, only to see it intercepted by Atlanta's James Mayberry, who strolled into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. The Saints lost 40-34, and Erxleben's rough introduction to the league was plastered across headlines. As if his debut wasn't tough enough, things got worse the very next week. While playing against the Green Bay Packers, Erxleben pulled his hamstring. The injury sidelined him for most of the season, forcing the Saints to scramble. They had to rely on a fullback, Tony Galbraith, as an emergency kicker, and even used wide receiver Wes Chandler as a puncher. Unsurprisingly, this patchwork solution didn't work, and the Saints finished the season with a middling 8-8 record. By his second season, fans were growing restless, expecting more from the highly drafted punter. But Erxleben's struggles continued. In the 1980 season opener, he missed a crucial game-tying field goal against the San Francisco 49ers, resulting in a 26-23 loss. That miss set the tone for the season as the Saints endured a brutal 1-15 campaign, one of the worst in NFL history. While it would be unfair to place all the blame on Erxleben, his inability to deliver in key moments didn't help. Things didn't improve much for him in the following years. In 1982, the Saints made a move that sealed Erxleben's fate as a kicker. They drafted Morton Anderson. Anderson would go on to become one of the greatest place kickers in NFL history, leaving no room for Erxleben in that role. From then on, Erxleben was relegated to punting duties, but even there, he couldn't shake the inconsistency that plagued his career. Erxleben also found himself in the spotlight for reasons off the field. During the 1982 NFL Players' Strike, he served as the Saints' union representative, a role that added more attention to an already challenging time in his career. By 1984, the Saints had had enough. They drafted Brian Hansen to take over punting duties, releasing Erxleben after 5 rocky seasons. After being cut, Erxleben spent 4 years away from football before attempting a comeback with the Detroit Lions in 1988. However, the attempt was short-lived and he retired for good shortly thereafter. Looking back, Erxleben's NFL career is a study in unfulfilled potential and bad luck. The Saints gambled big on him, hoping he'd be the rare specialist who could do it all, but the pressure of such a high draft pick, combined with injuries and key mistakes, proved too much to overcome. Erxleben's story is one of wasted potential and repeated bad choices. From his rocky NFL career, where he struggled to meet the high expectations placed on him, to his post-football life filled with scams and fraud, he seemed to spiral further away from the success he once dreamed of. What started as a promising career in sports ended with broken trust, financial ruin for many, and a tarnished name. His journey is a reminder that talent and opportunity can only take you so far without integrity and accountability. Instead of learning from his mistakes, Erxleben doubled down on bad decisions, leaving behind a legacy not of greatness, but of disappointment and deception. Well, that brings us to the end of today's video. Make sure to subscribe to NFL Icons for more such videos, and while you're at it, hit that like button too.